Hello, YouTube. Today I have the absolute pleasure of bringing you another podcast with Björn Liljeqvist, who is the former chairman of MENSA International. He is a trained engineer and he works doing sort of traveling seminars on how to learn extremely efficiently. He also has various services where he teaches people and trains their cognitive ability. I first met him during one of these seminars 2 years ago, and what he taught me and the other people there about sort of active retrieval, spaced repetition, memorizing stuff. It was just an absolute blessing, and it has been super helpful throughout my studies as to be, towards becoming a clinical psychologist. He is obviously an extremely intelligent guy, and I had a blast. I had something like 17 questions prepared, and I think we got through about 2.5 in 2 hours. So, this chat is a real deep dive into intelligence, conscience, AI, and sort of focus. And yeah, I hope you will enjoy it as much as I did. What else would you like to, share about yourself and what you do?
Well, I my background is technical. I am originally an engineer, a Master of Science in Electrical Engineering. I worked with embedded systems development, but that was quite a long time ago. For the last 20 years, I have been lecturing and collecting learning strategies to greatly expand the capacity for memory and comprehension and academic learning mostly. I go to universities and schools and companies and all over the country being Sweden here, to teach and instruct on how to learn much more in limited time. I've written a number of guidebooks, popular guidebooks about how to study in a smarter way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
most
went to one
people,
of those. Oh, sorry. I went to one of those lectures at the beginning of my psychology program, and it was just an
okay,
absolute blessing. It was so helpful, especially with the active retrieval. It just makes a huge difference. But I'm sure we can dive into that. I'm sorry for interrupting.
yes, you don't learn when you take stuff in. You learn when stuff comes out, when you
Yeah.
make your own of it. And the English common term for this is a retrieval practice or active retrieval, when your brain needs to reconstruct what it has retained and has to reconstruct it into your own words. But it's not always words. There are types of knowledge that cannot always be expressed in words, but there are still knowledge, like the knowledge of how to tie your shoelaces. Or somebody can be an excellent coder, programmer, but being completely unable to explain what they're doing or how. And often people who are good with words, they like to think that all knowledge has to be words, and if it can't be words, then it's not worth anything. But I would say, while mostly it is true that if you can explain something using words, you usually have perhaps a little better understanding of it. You can still be the best in your field without necessarily being very verbal about it.
Yeah.
Just look at sport. It's the kind of knowledge that is stored procedurally and in your motor skills that it still counts as knowledge, even if it's not verbal.
Yeah. And
Sorry.
even
So,
yeah, like one of some of these sort of very smartest philosophers ever expressed the ineffability of God and how many sort of complex concepts cannot, per definition, be described by words. So it is very interesting that you mention those sort of things.
yes, it's like if the only shapes that you know of, geometrical shapes, are shapes with corners like triangles and squares, and you see a circle and they try to explain what kind of triangle is that.
Yeah.
It's a very weird kind of triangle, the circle.
Yeah.
And then one you have a special dream one night when you encounter a sphere, and then you try to, okay, what kind of triangle is that? And yeah, that's when
Yeah.
it becomes difficult.
That is very fascinating. It's a major thing within Jungian archetypes, how they are sort of the ineffable structure of our psyche, and that whenever we actually try to express them, they become symbols instead. But the symbols are like one layer away from the sort of ineffable original thing, whereas words are
Yes.
another. Yeah.
Which also indicates that if you're going to speak symbol, it is good to be able to move between symbolic languages, because unless if you use only the one and the same symbol or metaphor all the time, you may begin to confuse that symbol with the reality. Whereas if you move between languages, you know that, like, multilingual people as opposed to monolingual people probably have a better understanding of that the reality and the language are related, not the same.
Yeah, I feel like we're certainly getting to a running start here, because that is one of the questions that I had prepared, and that was this sort of way of understanding things independently of what language or field of knowledge that you use to explain it, is something that I feel is a sign of very high intelligence that is not really measured in testing, sort of IQ and stuff like that. And I wanted to get your take on what is the difference between IQ and actual intelligence. Well, IQ is approximate to intelligence, of course, but what is missing in that model?
Yeah, that's an entire field of study, of research. What intelligence tests miss. I actually have this book by Keith Stanovich. It's a professor who wrote What Intelligence Tests Miss, and he argues that rationality, or being able to think slowly or rationally, is distinct from the kind of pattern recognition that intelligence tests typically measure. So this question that you're asking, what is it that the intelligence tests miss? It has many layers, but if we start with the first one, there is a kind of question that he uses as an example to illustrate. You have this scenario. In picture there's a cafe somewhere. We have three people at the cafe. There's John, there's Susan, and there's David. And John, he's unmarried, and he's looking at Susan. Susan is looking at David, and David is married.
Yeah.
So, is there an unmarried person looking at a married person in this scenario? Yes, no, or insufficient information.
Ah, I see.
Yeah. And of course, and the viewers may want to try and think, okay, so we have unmarried John is looking at Susan. Susan is looking at married David. Question, is there an unmarried person looking at a married person? And most smart people go straight into, they fall into the trap and they say, oh, there's insufficient information. I'm so clever.
Yeah.
But the answer is inevitably yes, because Susan is either one or the other. So you either have married John looking at married Susan, or you have unmarried Susan looking at married David. So we don't know which of the scenarios is the one, but it has to be or the other. And that is the kind of, he coined Professor Stanovich, he coined the term to be a cognitive miser, and miser is what we in Swedish would call a snåljåp. It's somebody, or a cheapskate. It's someone who doesn't really want to expend a lot of effort.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like we want to conserve our energy. So taking the easy way out, or avoiding having to think through a number of steps.
Yeah.
So that has been suggested to be one such thing. In general, I would say humans, we are not really good at rational or slow thinking. We are pattern recognizers.
Yeah.
But if we go one step even further, when we talk about understanding and comprehension, mostly we mean the capacity of the brain to form a model, like a replica of the world, to simplify something we read about or something we experience, to simplify so that we can make predictions about what is going to happen next.
Sort of like top-down analysis, which is just an efficient way of recognizing general patterns in order to quickly draw conclusions about the specific details.
Yeah, although I think it doesn't necessarily always have to be top down, which I think is more about the kind of like the methodology you use to arrive at this model. Because sometimes you arrive at your model of the world through basic pattern recognition. Sometimes you go bottom up, and but it is still a simplification of the real world. And but what if a big part of being alive and conscious is to be able to experience things?
Yeah.
Like I can observe somebody's behavior and their feeling, and I can even put a name to a certain experience. But what if I have never experienced that myself?
Yeah.
Then my understanding of it will be a purely sort of behavioral, simplistic model of what someone else is doing. And in that case, I could be really intellectual and smart, and but I would have still no idea whatsoever of what I am talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I have no first-hand experience of what I'm talking about. So I think processing information as opposed to actually experiencing some kind of reality are two very very different things. Like being able to pay attention.
Yeah.
What is attention? What does it mean to pay attention? What does it mean to be aware of something, or to be conscious? If you look at like one of these very fascinating things about if you want to become a little more intelligent, there's a very simple trick. I'm sure it will necessarily raise your IQ, but your crystallized intelligence will grow. And that is, use more bits of information when thinking. Think not in yes or no, but think from 0 to 100. So think in probabilities. Think in not in is this good or bad, but how good or bad is this? Will it rain tomorrow? Well, how likely is that going to be? Is this right or wrong? Well, how accurate is this model? Because it's not going to be perfect. And to always be open for that. It is somewhere in between. Rephrasing a question into that mode. Like, what if the answer is not a 0 or 1, but an...
That is very fascinating. And if I may, one of the things that I have heard, that if you're thinking about sort of raw brain power as intelligence, and then sort of consciousness or awareness levels in another dimension, one of the things that I have heard about very smart people is that they do this thing where they go beyond what is necessary thought. I always use Carl Jung as an example. I'm a huge fan. And he would come up with problems that no one else even thought of, and then present the solution to those problems. And I guess that is one of the ways, because what you're basically describing in my ears is either mental comfort or mental laziness. And going beyond that is something that is a very valuable thing.
Yes, and obviously this is very much related to this one of the big five called the openness factor, being open to other experiences. In my experience from Mensa, I joined Mensa like 34 years ago. I was 15 at the time. I've met many people there. I met some really bright, very open people. I've also met people who have not struck me as particularly curious about stuff. However, having said that, pretty much all Mensa members I have met tend to be quick.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't really met anyone who is okay. I met a small number, but most people tend to be quick in reasoning. But that is not the same thing as being actively curious about finding things that are at odds with your worldview.
Yeah.
Like, you can ask this: how well do people cope with cognitive dissonance? How comfortable are you entertaining an idea that goes completely against your worldview? Usually, the brain tends to reject that, like it's like having an immune system, like, oh, does not compute.
Yeah.
For example, you meet somebody who is really intelligent, but has values or religious beliefs or political beliefs that you find, well, negative.
Not true. Yeah.
And that is something that could create this cognitive dissonance. Like I can't make this fit together. How can you? You're so bright. How can you think this?
Yeah.
Or there are sometimes. Sometimes. Sorry.
Yeah. No problem.
I,
Yeah, I feel like there's some sort of you have intelligence as one dimension, and then you have awareness and whatever in one dimension, and then you have wisdom. And I feel like a lot of people that find out when they have high IQ, they don't use that in a humble way, or rather they perhaps believe that, well, I'm very smart, so what I believe is correct. And I think that if you are actually super smart, you realize that, oh, there are so many things to know that we are. I would say that you are one of the smartest people I've ever met, and maybe you're at 11% of like total knowledge of the universe, right? And that means that there's 89% that you don't know.
like way below 1%. I mean, it's a big world.
Yeah.
But your point still stands. If one should never, this may sound strange coming from me, but I actually believe this. One should never brag about IQ.
Yeah.
Because if an IQ test is your greatest accomplishment, you have no accomplishment.
Yeah.
You have potential. Potential. But that is like having an oil well under your house. It is there, but you're not using it.
Yeah.
Or maybe these days we shouldn't talk about oil. We should talk about I don't know, diamonds or natural gas or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's like being 6 or 7 feet tall and, claiming that I would be so great at basketball if I tried. Well, you didn't. So
Yeah, exactly. So try something. And the whole point about IQ test was, is there a way to find out where there is this hidden,
yeah,
highly valuable natural resource hidden inside humans that we
yeah,
haven't seen? So if we can
yeah,
find it, cultivate it, and make this, you know, make it
yeah,
shine.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that was the whole point, because intelligence doesn't always look like intelligence, and there are plenty of cases, and even of course more so in the past, and more so also in less developed countries. There are really bright people who do not get the opportunity,
yeah,
but having performing great on an IQ test isn't really an accomplishment. In fact, if that is your only accomplishment, don't say anything, just
yeah,
keep it to yourself.
yeah,
Let it inform you, let it inspire you to go, get a
yeah,
good education, or take chances, start a company,
yeah.
write a book,
Yes.
go out there, help people.
I have met
Um,
a lot of sort of very kind, interesting, and smart people in Mensa. So I don't want to come off as sort of dissing the sort of organization. Quite the contrary, I love Mensa. But there is this sort of feeling I get sometimes that this person's worst thing that ever happened to them is finding out that they have a high IQ. Um, because they sort of settle on it. And the other
it
thing, if I may just lift my two gripes, that is this sort of looking down upon people that are obviously super intelligent, but in a way that is not classified as academic endeavors, perhaps. Like carpenters. A great carpenter is so skilled and intelligent, but it is not viewed like that.
um, the, the thing about these IQ tests is that we're trying, or the scientific community is trying to pinpoint something that we all know is there in people. People have talent, and the theory says that there is this thing called general ability, the G factor, which correlates with the results on an IQ test. And there are different types of IQ tests that all tend to correlate more or less with the G factor, but you cannot measure the G factor directly, only
Yeah.
indirectly through taking these other tests. And it does say something, but I would be careful before claiming that it says that they have found tests to measure everything. You can never reduce a person to their IQ. You can never reduce them to their height or their shoe size either. But let's go back to that thing where you started. Like, what else does an IQ test miss? For example, it doesn't really say anything about how fine-grained your perception
Mm.
is. For example,
Mm.
if you have like your senses, like a sense of taste, even at
Mm.
the physical level, that sense of smell or eyesight. Um, if if you can perceive higher notes, distinguish
Yeah,
between
yeah,
different notes, um, the capacity for introspection, the capacity for self-regulation, or how about focus,
yeah,
concentration, being capable of maintaining
yeah,
focus on something.
yeah,
It's no coincidence that many exercises for improving concentration have to do with, you know, take a glass of water, focus on it for an hour,
yeah, yeah,
or light a candle, or like the heartbeat. Because when you don't have something that is sort of teasing your imagination, or rewarding you with new stimuli all the time,
yeah,
something has to come in its place. And um, Would there be a correlation between IQ and being able to learn how to focus? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
Would that correlation even be positive or negative? I don't know. I don't know even know if studies like that have been made.
yeah,
Maybe one of the listeners will know. But somebody who is capable of focusing and staying on task,
yeah, yeah,
extremely valuable capacity. There are some ideas. There are some things about the world that, in order to understand them, you need to be able to hold
yeah,
a certain number of things in your mind
yeah,
simultaneously,
yeah,
and simply being very fast.
yeah,
And high IQ people, in my experience, including myself, tend to be impatient people.
yeah,
Like, enough already, get to the point,
yeah, yeah,
Oh, I'm tired, I want something else, like moving around. And you may need to have like 7, 8, or 9 things simultaneously. And if 5 of those, this is related a bit to this whole cognitive load theory, and a bit like, if 5 of those placeholders you have in your mind are busy, distracted with something else, then you're not going to be able to fully
yeah.
grasp or comprehend something.
Yeah, I
We
feel
we
like
use
this sort of metacognition, like being able, the thing you said about sort of identifying what you think about things when talking about the political sort of thing is
mm,
something that is so important, because I have a theory that people that learn fast are more susceptible and vulnerable to propaganda because they learn faster. So, when they hear things, it takes hold faster. And being able to sort of control your mind and distinguish what is this that is in my head, and do I actually
yeah,
believe that? And I think that it
mhm,
correlates with the speed thing, because there's a famous debater on the internet that is known for eating a lot of Adderall and being just one of the fastest talkers. And one of his major debate opponents explained that if you really want to crush him, ask him to repeat what he just said. And he can't.
yeah.
And the things that come out of his mind, they're sharp, they're correct and brilliant, but there's just too much amphetamine in his brain, I guess. So he doesn't even remember what he just said. And what that is some sort of lack of something that is. I'm sure he would score high on an IQ test, but the things that you're talking about, he would probably not be very good at.
I don't know who you're talking about, but still. I mean, we all have our weak spots and vulnerabilities. And for example, vanity is one such. So if you appeal to somebody, it's like, most people are too stupid to understand this basic truth about
Yeah,
life.
yeah,
But
yeah,
you are smart enough to understand this. And I'm going to tell you something other people won't understand, but you will. I mean, people will feel flattered and they will swallow messages that they would be better off just, spit it out because it's
yeah,
poison. Um, and somebody who's not very intellectual people tend to view the world as if intellect is the main thing.
sorry, go on.
Yeah, so intellectual people, and by that I don't necessarily mean intelligent. I mean people who are prone to um, using a lot of words, thinking a lot in words in their minds, reading and talking and debating and all of that. It's easy to assume then that that is what thinking is, and the intellect itself likes to exaggerate its own importance.
Yeah, yeah,
Emotion is also part of the nervous system, as is, instincts and basic effects. And so
yeah. And I feel like
so
when talking about
it's not.
psychodynamic psychologists, they believe that the subconscious is just much more intelligent, and this is something that we talk about in sports psychology as well. If I were to throw you a ball, if you were try to rationalize, oh, I need to move my hand 30 centimeters this way and then close my hand, there's no way, right? And so over intellectualizing and using your sort of conscious mind can certainly put brakes on your intelligence, I do believe, in some ways.
True. Although some people, I think, go too far on this, and they think that only verbal thought, only reasoning and thinking in words, that is the only way to be conscious, which is absolutely absurd. Because if you throw me that ball, I can be fully aware of my emotions and catching it
Yeah,
without reasoning about it.
yeah, yeah.
But the intellect itself likes to think that it's on top, it's on top of our shoulders, even,
Yeah.
sort of looking down on from up here. And for example, where, if people say, where are you? Point to yourself. People like to think that, oh, I'm in my head. No, you might as well. We often, traditionally, you point to your chest, like, this is me.
Yeah.
In Japan, you point to the tip of your nose. But where are you? It is just as possible to be here, to have the sense of presence here, and also that tends to happen in life when we have, real life experiences with strong emotions, like you feel something strongly in your body. Then you're not up here anymore. You are very much in your body.
Yeah.
And so the intellect, the intellectual, the verbal, left hemisphere, etc., part of our nervous system, likes to kind of paint this illusion that there's nothing to see out there. There's only me.
Yeah.
And
That is very fascinating because when thinking about it, you can be brain dead and still be alive. You can't be heart dead and still be alive. And apparently there are some sort of central nervous system parts in your heart, although not very, not a lot.
you can freeze somebody's heart and still keep them alive by circulating their blood.
Yeah, but you would certainly not be alive on your own. But I guess you wouldn't be for long if you're brain dead either. But because you wouldn't be able to eat, I guess.
No, it's
but maybe
and there have been
life
people,
originates from the heart.
so they have no heartbeat. They have this constant pressure of, instead of it pulsating, there is this constant flow of blood instead, and
the
they're
things
still
that you're
alive.
talking about is super fascinating, but I'm going to be honest and say that because it is sort of a Nietzsche field, and I'm not super read up on Nietzsche, but I would love to sort of delve deeper into that sort of experience versus the Socratic reasoning if we ever do a part two. But that is just such a fascinating subject that I would want to read up upon it more. But you also have what's this famous guy from the 1300s that almost got convicted for blasphemy? Meister Eckhart, yes, that said that you can only really experience God. You can never hope to understand him, and even trying will drive you further from that experience. And he also made some sort of parallels to this in life that Immanuel Kant later picked up on with his transcendent idealism, where there is this sort of filtration between reality and how you perceive it in your head. But of course, there is not a filter between reality and what happens to you. If some car were to hit me, there is no translation of what happens to my body. It simply does.
this is, of course, also very much alive in Buddhism and in Zen,
Yes.
where it is sort of part of the foundation here that what you see is illusion.
Yeah.
And the reality, you in order to experience reality, you kind of have to break the frames of your mind. One of the fascinating and quite well known parts of Zen Buddhism is the riddles called the koan in Japanese. The most famous, of course, being what is the sound of one hand clapping, that a lot of people have. But what about this one? Does a dog have Buddha nature? And do you even understand the question? Most people, no. Does a dog have Buddha nature? Even or actually, I thought about this one just the other day. If everything can be reduced to a unit, you can reduce everything to a unit. What can you reduce a unit? Yeah. And you won't even understand the question until you have really meditated on it for some time. And even then, what you understand about the question could be something else entirely, because it's somehow designed to not reward the step-by-step reasoning part of the brain, which is sort of like flatland.
Yeah.
Instead, it forces you to go into a different direction, to kind of shut down certain processes in order to give space.
Yes, that is very fascinating, because you can connect it also to the Garden of Eve with the apple being sort of consciousness. That is something that the devil has proposed that will bring you away from paradise, which symbolically in this case would be the experience of life, where a dog is just living.
I'm not sure if this is interesting enough for the podcast, but have you heard of a Princeton psychologist from the 1970s who wrote a massive bestseller, sold millions, and has influenced a lot of popular culture as well ever since? It's still being reprinted. His name was Julian Jaynes, and he wrote a book called The Origin of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind.
Yeah, I've heard about it, but I haven't read it. But I'm very fascinated by the subject.
One of the greatest reading experiences I've ever had. And
what was its name?
Its name was
Julian Jaynes. Yes. Thank you.
And I'm not claiming that he proposed this very bold theory in 4 parts back in the 70s, and but he was a bit early for his time. So even though it is solidly scientific, it's not based on mere speculation. It very much goes into archaeological and linguistic records and so on. Its consequences are quite huge, because what he's saying is that modern people, men, women, etc., our mentality is quite different from that of our ancestors as late as 3,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And that ancient humans did not think as we do today, which we are taught. We have literacy. We are used to the written word. We can think ahead. We can visualize things. We can even now conjure up places you and I have never been and imagine going through there and talking about hypothetical scenarios and so on.
Yeah.
Basically, what he's saying is that before 3,000 years ago, what we today conceive of as people's own thoughts, people back then instead of experienced as the voices of the gods.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you read history, like you read, people from the Middle Ages, a bit weird, but still kind of like us. Even the Romans, they were sly and they were brutal, cunning, but it's still kind of like us. But then you go back, to the ancient Egyptians and the Sumerians, and you just struggle to make sense of culture back then.
Yeah.
And the cosmologies and mythologies and rituals that permeate everything.
Yeah.
Like nobody was an atheist back then. It was a meaningless concept. The gods wasn't something you would believe in. It was part of everyday life, and you needed it. The priesthoods and the hierarchies of gods was not something. Was not like some kind of luxury belief. It was something that was necessary, absolutely vital for the functioning of society.
Yeah.
But then something happened. We can see it in the art from that time, at least in in the Near East and Mesopotamia and around the Mediterranean and so on. Is that for the first time, people start wondering, where did the gods go?
Yeah.
Like a new mentality arises around that time, and people stop hearing the gods. Now they need elaborate rituals in order just to hear an echo of that voice again.
Yeah.
And that trend has been ongoing now for thousands of years. Even today, here sometimes this motif in art or in music, like, and then I saw light, or and then I heard a voice, and it was gone, or a voice told me this. And I'm not just talking about in the clinical, like in schizophrenia, and I'm talking in sane people having artistic experiences and so on, and the longing for the lost presence of the gods.
Yeah.
And Julian James was fascinating insofar as he approached this from the perspective of very much standard psychological science. His background was even in behaviorism, so which he abandoned, but it wasn't something pseudoscientific or anything like that. But I thought it was fascinating when I read that book, because like 60 years prior to him or something like that, I have a friend who's a Waldorf teacher, Rudolf Steiner teacher in those schools, and he once lent me a book called. I'm not an anthroposophist myself, but in this book by Rudolf Steiner is called "World History in the Light of Anthroposophy" or something like that. When he explains ancient humans, it is pretty much the same thing as Julian James explains 50 years later, but from a strictly scientific point of view. Basically, ancient people did not think, they did not reason. They had a different kind of mentality that allowed them to function well in their society, but which would not really work today in our society. One of the there was a TV series on HBO called Westworld that was very much influenced by Julian James, bicameral theory. And if you've heard of the comic books called the X-Men, Chris Claremont, who wrote the major part of the X-Men back in the day, was very influenced by this bicameral theory, and even alluded to it in the comics back then in the 1980s.
That is very fascinating. And I read Carl Jung's autobiography, and he talked about this sort of thinking thing. And of course, Jung grew up sort of in the 1890s, and he would talk about the new world versus the old world. And with the old world, he meant that, you know, back then, if you lived out in the mountains or, you know, far out in the woods, you were not a part of the civilization of the new world. And he explained that to a normal person, it was almost as if they had psychic abilities almost from this, because you have the cognition, the awareness that may or may separate you from the experience, but it also, according to Jung, will very much put a lid on your intuition. And whether that is some sort of inner voice, or like they discovered when they built their Tower of Silence, where Jung and his sort of followers would spend, I think the normal time would be 3 weeks. No reading, no talking, just alone, because once you sort of get out of the habit of thinking in words, which you can only do if you stop speaking, don't read, don't do anything, then the whispers become these sort of symbols that we talked about earlier, or the ineffable archetypes, where maybe you will just get some sort of, maybe to a mathematician it will present as a graph, maybe, you know, it's, you can't even explain what it is, but it is some sort of highly intelligent information that is coming from inside. And he explained that the people in the old world, they were like this to a much higher degree.
Yes, and indeed, much of that old world is still here, you know, and out there, and you only have to get out of Stockholm to sense there is a subtle,
Yeah.
but still, shift
Yeah.
in mentality. Like, just leave the big cities or go into the big cities, like visit Manhattan, and sense it in the air and in how people act to each other and so on. Even so, when you do put words on things, and of course Jung was a master in this regard, in being able to put words on difficult things, there is another layer of insight that is revealed.
Yeah.
Because I had a lecture just the other day, and at the university, and I raised this point that to get an education is to expand your vocabulary vastly by thousands of new terms and terminology. And we need those words, because without those words, we lack precision.
Yeah.
And it's like typing, wearing mittens where you can't use your fingers.
Yeah.
You can only get these very bold general motions, but not the exactness.
Yeah.
When Jung talks about these archetypes, not all intelligence acting inside us in our brains is conscious intelligence.
Yeah. So.
I mean, but it can still express itself. And having a little respect for those parts of oneself that is outside of rational thought, or basically outside of ego, is quite, I think, I was about to say useful, but useful is a word that the ego likes to use.
Yeah, maybe, well, essential, I would call it essential or necessary, because one of the
Essentially,
main,
goes to the being.
yeah, because your unconscious, you may either view it as yourself or your ally, but most people view it as some sort of thing that they're afraid of, I think. And it is often, in my opinion, I'm not accrediting this to Jung because maybe he would smack me over the head if I said it, but basically this sort of modern incongruence between your conscious and unconscious mind only gets worse and worse the more you're trying to put a lid on it by distracting yourself with screens or medicine or things like that. And people learn to a very high degree to just shut up, shut up. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to listen to the things coming from my unconscious. Because whether it is you or your ally, it may give you some harsh truths that you may or may not want to hear.
Yes. There is a debate online that keeps recurring every now and then about how not all people think in pictures. Some people are not even able to visualize at all.
Yeah.
And it's a bit rare, but it's not super rare. It's like, I think 1 or 2% of the population never are not able to visualize anything. They think of them in other ways. And similar to that, you have the not all people think in words or verbalize. And very, very verbal thinkers think it is ridiculous. No, of course, that what kind of life would that be like, going around like some kind of animal? But I'm certainly capable of thinking in words, and I do when I have to. But I have practiced for a long time to any time that I find myself, that I discover that I have begun like a rant in my mind, I notice it and I stop it.
Yeah.
And it's like a common thing would be you have some encounter with a person and afterwards you think, oh, I should have said this, or next time I meet this person, I'm gonna say this and this and this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or people are sometimes rehearsing arguments in their minds. And that is completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
And I even think it is pernicious. It's something that can be harmful. And simply learning to recognize it, just like learning to recognize that, oh, I'm having a bad posture, I need to correct this. I need to blow my nose because I have my nose is full of snot.
Yeah.
I need to stop going. I need to, like basic common sense that we teach people. The same thing should apply, I think, to that, because there is a place for thinking and using words in your mind. But sometimes the words are just there, self-sustaining, and serving as this distraction that you're talking about, I think.
Yeah. Do you have, I know you do a lot of different sort of training and exercises with your company, Brain Gain. Is there some sort of specific method that you use for reactivating your mind when it is just going on some BS that is not very useful or helpful?
Well, there is, although I have things that I practice and I'm happy to share about, which are not necessarily part of my sort of commercial business aspect of what I do. But a simple exercise is you need to get back into your body.
Yeah,
feel the pressure from the ground. Feel the heart. Move into your heart. And I'm not saying heart as in some kind of, like some love song symbolically.
You
I
mean
mean
it
literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
The nervous system goes down there, and pay attention to what you see, pay attention to what you feel. One way of doing it is, I mean, you can even turn this linguistic, the tendency to put words and stuff, you can use that to our advantage here. Name the feeling, describe the feeling.
Yeah.
Metacognition, as you said earlier. Right now, this is happening. It may people may consider that to be a little bit like, oh, but then you're detaching yourself. You're not fully experiencing the emotion, and that is bad. No, what you're doing is you stop confusing the emotion, the negative emotion, this state of mind that you're in. You stop confusing that with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to stop. I need to stop identifying myself with a particular negative state of mind.
Yeah, and I feel like the
This
thing
is
that you're describing helps you more feel the emotion, because sort of being in a passive state where your emotions and your thoughts combine. Let's say you are sad about a breakup and you're sad, but then you think about the breakup and then you just the thought part of it feels like to me, and I'm not a clinical psychologist yet, but it feels like this only prolongs the suffering. Whereas if you just be in the moment, like you said, and then pay attention to the sadness, that is speed running emotion in a healthy way, I do believe.
Yes. And since we talked about, the Jungian, the archetypes, and we talked about Julian Jaynes and his the pluralistic gods of the ancient peoples and so on, and the subconscious and the superconscious as in intelligence inside us, but that is still outside of our thought processes.
Yeah.
Communicate with those parts. Think of that is also me, but it is a different me.
Yeah.
I can, and I use that a lot actually.
Yeah.
Every time I have to do important intellectual work or give a lecture or something, I direct myself to other parts of my brain. I call upon my subconscious or my superconscious to bring forth inspiration and ideas.
Yeah.
And then once I have done that, I allow myself to release a little bit of control.
Yeah.
I allow new things to pop up in my mind,
Yeah.
and then just simply talk about them.
Yeah.
And of course, the risk you're taking by releasing control is that you may say something stupid that you're gonna regret, but it is worth it, because if I'm too tightly controlled, I'm basically blocking myself from the arrival of the inspiration I need.
Yeah,
in
and I
order
feel
to
like the things that, if you try to keep a lot of things in mind, even someone with a great working memory, you're just never going to be able to flow and be as fast as, or present, or responsive, or creative as if you're just trusting yourself. There's actually this interesting thing when arm wrestling, and when you compete in arm wrestling, you start with this certain setup, and there are there's like 6 things that is good to do off the go, and it's very fast. Yeah, so it's like this, this,
uh,
this, and each thing that you have to try and remember will decrease your decision making with each decision by 0.15 seconds, which is why beginners
which
will
is a
just beginners will just lose before they even do anything. So you have to make those things ingrained, and this is something that they teach in the military as well. When it's go time, it's go time. Then you have to have done the preparation and then just do the thing.
And if we may perhaps going back to daily life, we have talked about, consciousness and stuff like that. But if we talk about schools and education, there is a weird and ridiculous idea that people don't need to know anything because you can find everything online, and that you don't need to learn basic stuff. If you want to become good at math, I have some experience in that field. You need to automate a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You need to be able to see directly and recognize the patterns, and to be able to chunk. Chunking is when you take many things and sort of bake it into one piece instead of having 7 pieces, so that you can manage them. And that takes some knowledge, including factual, semantic knowledge of what things are called and stuff. Like the table of multiplication. 7 by 9 is 63. That needs to come like that, because otherwise you're going to be too slow.
Yeah.
And you're going to miss connections. What's the point in knowing the cities, the capitals of the world? I can always find out if I need it. Yeah, you can. But the thing is that somebody who has a lot of factual knowledge, when he sees the name of a country, or of a Timbuktu, you see that name somewhere, and immediately it rings a bell that that the world. It's and this very, very fundamental insight is central. As you say, the military, arm wrestling, sports, music.
Yeah.
In order to play, you need to automate things.
Yeah.
And so when I started giving lectures, I started to become interested in memory techniques, and how to increase reading speed reading, and reading comprehension. That was over 20 years ago. I felt memory had low status.
Yeah.
Teachers didn't like to talk about memory. You should never memorize. That's what they told us at Chalmers University of Technology, where I studied. You shouldn't memorize. You should understand. And I get it. I understand. I even agree with it to certain, up to a point. But that was mistakenly understood to be, you don't need to remember anything as long as you understand.
Yeah.
Or I don't need to memorize anything as long as I understand what the teacher is saying. And that was probably not what they actually meant. What they meant was, it's not enough to just memorize.
Yeah.
Agree completely. It's not enough.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty good start.
Yeah, I feel like that is a strong structure to begin. If you view the sort of knowledge of your mind as the night sky, then the different things to memorize are the stars. And of course, maybe the constellations is what you're after, but the constellations in themselves are, you need the words and concepts. And how could we properly understand philosophy if we don't know who Kant, Nietzsche, or Socrates are, and their context? It is difficult, I would say.
It's it's this concept of balance keeps coming back. I mean, obviously, if you push one end enough, then the other end is going to, the swing is going to swing back at you. Because I can see also how, if you push too far into memorization land, then you need some force to push you out into the world, in order to experience stuff, because you need more than just names.
Yeah.
Like, or take how the things that you experience when you're doing meditation or relaxation or concentration exercises, we barely have words for them.
Yeah.
And as a consequence, we don't talk about them.
Yeah.
And what we don't talk about becomes less important in our culture.
Yeah.
And I guess that is the role we need. That's why we need symbols. That's why we need art.
Yeah.
And music to sort of prepare us for what we can experience when we encounter
Yeah,
real things.
absolutely. And I feel like artists, and they bring sort of this new input for, because let's say you are a very theoretic person, maybe you only like sort of manipulating or working with pre-existing knowledge. Um, you need to appreciate the intuitives, the creatives, for giving you something to work with. And of course, if you can do both, then that is amazing. And what you say is so relevant for clinical psychology, because I wanted to ask you about sort of the pros and cons and the risk of brain rot when it comes to overusing AI, because I know that you love using AI as a very efficient method of studying things where you feed into it and then it's very good as a study buddy, simply. But people nowadays use it as some sort of lazy thing. Sorry, the sound cut out.
So it can be a good study buddy. It doesn't necessarily have to be. It is one thing one has to learn how to use it, because the danger of brain rot, or as I call it, the illusion of study. You can get the feeling that, oh, it looks like I'm studying. I'm having this great conversation here, but you're not actually learning.
Yeah.
It just looks like it. It is very real, and I wrestle quite a lot with this because
Yeah, I was going to ask, would you still, if you had a new class of students and they didn't know about AI, would you show them AI, or would you just be like, well, let's just not go there?
that question is actually not so hard. If that was an option, I would not go there.
Yeah.
But it isn't an option. So I have to go there, and I have to get there first in order to
Yeah.
find out where there be dragons, so
Yeah.
I can guide students properly.
Yeah.
Because we teachers in general, they know how, or most of them, or they should know how to teach in the old ways.
Yeah.
When they are forced into new territory of which they have very limited experience, therefore their existing skill set, which may be profound,
Yeah.
doesn't really apply as strongly.
Yeah.
And we therefore risk pushing them into teaching things for which they were not really well prepared. So it's like, let me give you an example. Would you rather have Thomas Edison teach you electrics, or would you have a recent graduate from MIT or Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm teach you about electrics?
I would say,
Electricity.
in order to not say simply yes or no, binary, as you said earlier, I would want 90% from the new person and 10% from Edison.
Yeah, I would say the newly educated person will know so much more than Edison.
Yeah.
However, the amount of time and the level of practical knowledge of applied electrics. I mean, Edison was a theoretician.
Yeah.
His theoretical knowledge was actually quite superficial. But to hear him talk about, the very basics of this would be, a profound experience. Or for that matter, if you take another one, Tesla, who had both theory and practical knowledge, and but also a big amount of weirdness mixed into the whole thing. So It's like if a teacher who has a full command of their material and who can teach that, why would you want to disturb that by forcing that teacher to instead use something else? But having said that, the only thing I'm saying here is that as a culture, we have not yet understood AI. We're far from understanding its long-term impact on our way of thinking. You know, the breakdown of the bicameral mind and that theory of how consciousness appeared like only 3,000 years ago, with written language. The written language, there is a famous book often used in literature studies by Walter J. Ong called Orality and Literacy, where he goes through how the written language, being literate, being able to read, alters how you think about things, alters your language. You use a different kind of language. You think of language all in a different way. And let's take, if you have a teacher who cannot read, it can still be a very good teacher as long as they teach matters of which they have good command. AI is it is already altering how we think about stuff and how we, and text. You can see this in chorus literature. Look at the way literature is morphing and looking, and you move away from these long, convoluted sentences. You get more, you get more white space on pages. You get like the English language literature as opposed to French, German, Swedish traditionally. You always get the topic sentence comes first. The main point comes first. Explanation. Examples. New paragraph. Main point. Blah, blah, blah. It wasn't like that. Traditional Swedish academic literature is like yada, 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 yada. And then you get to the main point, like hidden in the middle of. So you need to be a better reader. You need more patience. People don't have that kind of patience today. And
I feel like sort of TikTok, not only AI, but TikTok and this whole thing that really messes with people's sort of focus and stuff like that. There are plenty of people that they can read like technically, but they cannot sit down and read a book. And that is worrying.
Yes, but then you ask, okay, so should we strengthen this? Like we have a bifurcation here, two paths, and maybe the path is like something in between or in the middle, or a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But the dimensions here is you can strengthen the basic cognitive skills of focus, reading, mentalization. And the other path, maybe it's not either or, but it's like like in vector algebra, you have the space that is sort of spanned by the basic dimensions of the room. The other one would be then strengthen the support systems, the technology. And it has been like that all along. Once humanity learned to write, no longer needed the memory systems and the kind of story-based, picture-based ways of telling stories and telling history, because we could write down things, we could have information.
I certainly agree with you. I think I used to be pro AI and explain that a mathematician using a calculator won't make him bad at math. He will still be a great mathematician. But the problem I feel like with this sort of what even the reasoning and the sort of decision making and almost the cognitive executive function, because that will sort of, the things that you teach or that you teach in your courses, I feel like overusing AI is super toxic to those specific things. And I feel like a lot of teachers, they're so stubborn in, why would you hand someone a task where they are supposed to do multiplicative math in their head without using a calculator, and then be like, here, do this at home, don't use a calculator. And when you could just, for instance, let's say you keep on having sort of computer digital exams, and everyone studies using the AI anyway. They download the old exams, and then they're like, what's the answer to this? And then they memorize these sort of AI answers, and they go into the exams and they pass, because even if the AI is only 70% right, 70% is good enough.
Is good enough.
Why not do here are 100 exam questions on this course, here are the answers, 10 of these randomly will appear on the exam, here you go. And then on the other side, I have this great example with one of Jung's greatest sort of followers, Marie-Louise von Franz, who excelled at dream interpretation and fairy tale interpretation. It's the same sort of symbolic interpretation. And they would do this live. So let's say you have seminars with this, you watch a movie, and then you write down on this piece of paper your interpretation, and this will be the exam in 3 months from now. You may study using AI, but if you don't know how to do this by heart, you will certainly fail.
So many things interesting here. And just while I'm at it, since you mentioned dreams, another one of my big interests is the concept of lucid dreaming. So if you at some point want to explore that, we could talk about that as well. But about AI, I think where we're going is this. We need, and education needs to strengthen basic capacity. That is, we need AI users, humans, who themselves know things, are capable of things, are good, skilled readers who can read in depth, can read, vertically, horizontally, along all sorts of dimensions, because otherwise you will be a poor AI user.
Yeah.
I have a little mathematical model here. It's like the combined intelligence of a system. Like you and me, we form like a combined little system here of two humans. Yeah. It is your knowledge and intelligence multiplied by my knowledge and intelligence, multiplied by the speed of our canal, the interface, our communication, which means that if we are in the same room, we can communicate with body language and gestures and so on. If we use, ironically, we're both using a foreign language here because we're not English speakers, either of us. A human and AI, it doesn't matter how smart the AI gets. If the human is not smart enough to ask the right questions and to use the responses in order to go deeper, and if the human is not capable of using the interface, or if the interface is slowed down to, like, typing using your index fingers, then who cares how smart the computer is, because you're going to be slow.
Yeah.
So we need two people. One is a good reader, skilled, has focus power, has imagination, has creativity, has knowledge. And the other one is not, but has a good AI. The skilled human is still going to win.
Yeah.
And if we may stroll into an adjacent academic field, which is economics, and we have the theory of comparative advantage.
Yeah.
which applies to this field very much. It says that a country, national, in the economy of nation states and so on. Comparative advantage theory says that, let's say you have Iceland and Norway, and let's say that Iceland is good at making aluminium and fishing.
Yeah.
And Norway is also good at fishing and oil. And let's say that Norway is even better at fishing than Iceland is.
Yeah.
However, comparatively speaking, Norway is better at oil.
Yeah.
And it makes more sense for Iceland to do fishing than for Norway to do it, even if Norway is better at fishing, because comparatively speaking, each country should focus on that thing where it has the greatest comparative advantage.
Yeah.
So it means if you apply that same kind of reasoning, this is not really an original thought of mine. I saw there was one of those American economists coined this. I don't know if it was.
Well, I completely understand what you mean, because if you go by traditional IQ, an AI will crush even. What was the guy with the super memory on Mustiga Mauri that was? You did the maths and he did the ingredients on the mustard or whatever it was. Andreas?
Yeah. Same episode. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. AI smokes him in working memory, but it is better than to sort of learn the other things that AI can't do.
At the end of the day, humans are still part of the system.
Yeah.
Well, for no other reason than the humans are the ones who will tell the AI what we want.
Yeah.
The humans will be the ones for whom even if AI can be smarter, but it is still humans who contribute the values and tell the systems what is it that we want.
Yeah.
And the more you know, and the more in command you are over your own faculties, the more you will be able to express what is it that is really important.
Yeah.
Comparative advantage in this case means that if you have if these computers now are so smart, wouldn't it be better for them to put all their work into the highly valuable AI work and let humans do that thing which humans do best, even if the AI could do the human part better than the humans?
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like it is still better for the robots to do robot stuff, and let humans do human stuff.
Yeah.
So, and when it comes to education, my prediction here of what is going to happen over the next, certainly within 5 years, is the level of difficulty, of course. Once academia and schools absorb and learn to use this new technology, the level of difficulty is going to skyrocket.
Yeah.
You're not going to get 100 exam questions to memorize. You're going to get 10,000 questions.
Yeah.
And you're going to get, here are the topics, here are the 150 topics that will be on the examination, but you will get, first of all, there will be examinations that will be purely human, no AI whatsoever, just practicing. It's like sports. We have engines, but still people go to the gym. You do bench pressing, you do muscles, because you need the basic physical body needs to be good.
Yeah.
So we will get that, but then the actual combined human plus robot will look more like they do in the real world, like in business. So you get really difficult questions where you need to use AI in order to even have a fair chance at doing it. And not there yet. Schools today still operate under the classical paradigm, but then this new technology on top that is a temptation for students to go and cheat.
I feel like this is a super positive thing, really, because the old or the classical school system, since AI will make it so much more effective in learning these sort of things, and maybe some things will be rendered unnecessary, just like some lists of things to memorize were rendered sort of unnecessary by the internet, because some things are fine to look up. You don't have to remember everything, just like a lawyer doesn't remember every law. And I feel like AI could be a positive step in that direction, in that so you could focus more perhaps on these sort of human things. Because as you say, AI is completely input dependent, and it should be, because once it no longer requires input, then Skynet is an actual risk. And the input dependence means that whatever you miss will never be a part of the problem set. So you listen to someone's entire life story, and there are certain things that experienced clinicians, like warning bells, will just go off. Like when a mechanic hears a certain ticking sound in an engine, and oh, this engine's gonna bust soon. And there are so many examples of such little glittering things that you need to be able to pick up on, and then perhaps put it into an AI. But so you get a story of like 45 minutes of a person's life, and within that is 4 seconds of, and my wife for some reason usually hides my keys, and then they just go on with and you need to be able to pick up on, oh, that's a very big red dangerous flag, because that is one of the key components of gaslighting. But if you don't know that, because you always ask your questions to AI and get some sort of answers, and haven't actually built this foundation of knowledge and perception yourself, then there are so many things that you will not be very good at.
This actually connects very much to what we talked about in the beginning, about how when we say to understand something, people say, please understand me. Dear clinician, psychologist, I want you to understand, I want to feel understood, and so on. What people mean is not only, I want you to be able to correctly model my language and behavior so as to be able to predict my next move or sentence. What they say is, I want you to feel what I feel.
Yeah.
I want to know that you can, smell what I smell and experience the sadness or the frustration that I'm feeling.
Yeah.
I don't want you to just model it. I think computers are very rapidly becoming better than humans at all forms of pattern recognition.
Yeah.
But we as humans want more than that. They can simulate, by using language, they can simulate, they model. Understanding as a model and understanding as experience are two different things. And a human can do both, so we tend to conflate them.
Yeah.
But they are not the same thing. And until we know that the computer can not only model, but also, and not only model and mimic, but also properly experience, there will be something in there that is more of a human thing. Going back to things that were human skills that will be obsolete and so on, I have a very concrete example. Back in school in the 1980s, we had typewriting in class. typewriting class.
Yeah.
We were taught to type using these mechanical, you really had to, but using the correct finger positions.
Yeah.
So without looking, you had to learn how to type without looking.
Yeah.
Super grateful for that.
Yeah.
It's been, I mean, I can type fast. I can express myself in writing that way. But then now I see teachers saying like, teachers older than me who say that, no, you never really learn anything unless you need to draw the shape of the letters with your pencil.
Yeah.
And I think,
Yeah.
but they have kind of a point in that psychologically, when I write using a pen, there is a very distinct feeling to it. First of all, I'm only using my right hand. I'm right-handed. And it is a feeling that it is much more quiet. It is me with my thoughts. When I'm typing on a computer, it is different because I'm using both hands, which to me feels better because it feels like it is a more complete expression.
Yeah.
As I'm using both.
Yeah.
I also know that whatever I type, I will be able to edit later.
Yeah.
But very rapidly, voice to text, which is something I use daily.
Yeah.
I have a digital journal.
Yeah.
Every day. I summarize. I talk into my phone, and then I have that transcribed. And using AI, I have it, hashtagged and bullet points and so on. So and I've been doing that for 2 years now. And should we teach kids? I have always said that we must teach the kids to type properly, otherwise they will be at a disadvantage in the digital economy in today's world. But I'm not longer sure if that is true, because if we get a generation of people who will only be able to dictate long texts.
Yeah, I feel like maybe the first part, just like with transportation, being able to run and walk is very important. And now we have cars, and you should also be able to drive. But the middle steps, a horse carriage, you don't really need that anymore, I guess. So maybe typing is like riding horseback, where the alternative method beyond your natural first step has been evolved.
That's actually an interesting idea that you should be at the frontier of technology while maintaining the basics.
Yeah.
So you use electric cars if you want to, or supersonic jets, yes, but you should still learn how to run, walk, and swim.
Yeah.
And it could be. It's but being able to express oneself without using the voice, I think, has been a winner historically.
Yeah.
And now that I am rediscovering using voice as an input method, I find that when I speak, I say things in a different way than I would have written them.
Actually, now that you say it, this new method or this combination of yours could be much better, because I do believe there is a very good thing writing with pen. I always take notes during class with a pen, because then I remember it. If I type it, I don't remember it. But you have added another element, which is speech, and becoming good at speaking is certainly a super valuable thing as well. So dictating, even my first sort of snap judgment was, but it is lazier. But is it really lazier than typing? Because typing is super comfortable as well. And rather, this is practice in expressing yourself via speech in addition to the pencil.
Yeah. What I have found is that when I need precision, when I need to think very clearly and really get a good, when I need a text for other people to read, I type it and I edit it very carefully. When I if I need to sort of think very creatively, then I may use a pencil. And nobody else but me can read my italics when I write. But when I need to get thoughts out there, when I need to start to like, okay, let me start somewhere. What do I know? Now, at this point, I use voice. I use voice to text because then I get help. I get like a first feedback. Okay, this is what you were talking about. And that brings me up to like level 1. And then depending what I need to do next. Often it is I need to deliver a lecture. Then it is more about, getting it into my head. If it is about writing a text, a column for some paper or a letter, then I need to sit down and type it myself. I am not at all comfortable letting other people read AI texts that I have prompted. I know AI doesn't. I write much better than AI. I just don't write as fast as AI.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because AI, it is a very sort of, what would you call it? It's like fast processed food in that it is very easy to read and it's a great communicator, but it is not beautiful and it is not sort of sophisticated. But I love sort of when I'm reading the Critique of Reason or some other German text where each sentence is 50 words long. I love using AI. Sorry?
It's brain gymnastics to read those. I love that kind of language where you have to, and there is like this idiot sentence in there, and
I use two study methods for these old texts, and one is the slow one where I read a page, and from that page I'm going to get some sort of golden nugget, which I'm going to translate in my head and write on a post-it, and then I put it on that page. But it is slow. And when I'm get a new book by Jung or whatever, and I don't want to do like 3 pages a day, then I'll just every page, can you explain this to me? Can you explain this to me? And I feel like it is important to keep doing the old thing in order to not get brain rot. But it is a hard balance because using AI in the brain rot manner will speed up things immensely.
the thing that way before, the only way to read anything was slowly. And that meant that you could only read so much. On the other hand, if something was published back then, it was pretty likely that it would have some quality. That is no longer true.
Absolutely.
Most of what is written is not worth reading, which means that if the only way to read is to read slowly, you're going to waste your time reading the wrong things. So expanding, think of it like a pyramid. It's like we're expanding the base of the pyramid so we can be much more discerning and selective about what things we want to study in depth using our own faculties, and then augment that by having a dialogue. Like take a book and have a dialogue with AI about it. And is actually, I don't think that is brain rot. That is, we have every right to let our AI tools challenge us and our understanding, even finding out, is there something I'm missing about this? Is there something the author isn't saying here that it could be said? And but is there, if I may ask you then, when you're doing physical exercise, you can tell if you're doing it wrong because you get injuries. And you can tell if you're not doing it at all because, well, you get bad health and all sorts of things. What are the signs that you are not using your brain correctly? What are the signs that AI is rotting your brain, would you say?
I would say reduced function in the context that the things that you specialize in. If you are struggling to actually read a book, if the thought of reading a meta-analysis makes you want to jump out a window, and if you start to sort of develop some sort of symptomology of ADHD, then that is brain rot in my sort of estimation.
Like when even the desire to remain or to go deeper, or the curiosity is sort of goes away.
Yeah, and if you find yourself always taking what is effective shortcuts, but you find that when you try to not do that, it is extremely difficult. Like, we oftentimes take our cars everywhere. And if, like, I could go out and run 2 kilometers if I had to, and it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But if you find yourself at that point, of course, physicality and cognitive function are not the same. But if you ever find yourself that you can't make yourself do it, or you fail to do it, like you start but then you fail, then you're in trouble, I think, because if your physicality goes down the toilet, you still have your brain and your willpower. So, I need to fix this. And then you try to fix it. But what if the thing that is required to fix your brain is broken? If the executive function that is needed for fixing brain rot is rotten.
One of the things I often raise when I talk about how to improve studying and so on is that, and similar also to how, ADHD and how strategies for overcoming challenges like that is, do not let yourself depend on your willpower. Rather, build structures so that the things you need to happen in your life have a lower starting threshold.
Yeah.
Like, we do the things in rooms and spaces that people are expected to do in such spaces. If you go to the gym and your body will start exercising.
Yeah.
It's not that you will feel a desire to do it, it's just that you go there and that is what happens.
Yeah.
Enter a church and you start to whisper and you get silent because it's a high ceiling and everything. And if you go to a shopping mall, you will be distracted by lots of glitzy things and you can buy stuff. So if we want to avoid brain rot, we need to make sure that the structures are there in our life so that the antidote, the counter agent, appears to us. Like if you want to read, you need a place where you want to sit and read and where there are no screens nearby. If you want to exercise, you need to make sure that you have your shoes are standing there waiting for you to put on, a place to go. And it was one of my more recent explorations into these structures that you can make. And I came up with that there are four. You need physical structures. That is, you need a place for the different things. You need a place to rest. You need a place to read. You need a place to work. You need a place to exercise. But then you also need social structures. And by that I mean you need the social context. You will become the average of your friends. Yeah. You need to get better friends sometime. And
but can I just
deliberate.
I just want to, because we've been talking for a good while and I love it. And this is the first time that I sort of slightly disagree with what you say. So it would be fun to delve into this. And
Yes, good.
if you work out physically by pulling a sled, the friction on the ground is part of it. And if you want to get a lot of things done, it would be amazing to reduce this friction. But won't reducing the friction of executive function in order to become more productive and functioning, like within the case of ADHD and context and structure, further reduce your willpower by eliminating the need for it? Wouldn't it, if you want to...
Yeah. What I would say is that the willpower grows by the number of wins. Like when you get things done, it gives you the necessary positive feedback that gives you the strength to try a little harder next time.
True.
It's like when the friction is so high, it's like in physics, where the starting friction is one thing, it's higher.
Yeah.
But once it is rolling, friction is lower. So you need to lower the starting friction enough so that you actually succeed with something, however small, and so that you get familiar and even addicted to getting small daily wins.
Yeah.
And that is how you build the strength, is how I would say, so that next time you don't really need to lower the friction that much.
Yeah.
Because you're in a better position today because yesterday you got started. So that is how I would answer. You need to when you're like you're facing a wall here. You're here. You need to get up here. But when you're sitting here, you don't know how high the wall is.
Yeah.
So but if I lower it, I get across it. Yes.
Yeah.
That is when I get this lesson. I did it, and I could do it.
Yeah.
The four structures I was talking about: physical structures like place, social structure, people, mental structures.
Yeah.
When learning, and those would be the framework within which you're working. Like, and this is actually what 24 years ago, what ignited my interest in advanced memory techniques for learning Japanese kanji, the Japanese characters, building a receiver structure in my mind, basically, which is a very special form of a so-called a memory palace. And having that in place and building that took some time. It took a couple of weeks to build that structure, but once it was in place, it would just, pour in.
Yeah.
And many of the things we're supposed, or we should be supposed to learn in basic school and elementary school, are the recipient structures. This is why should you learn the names of old kings, for example, kings and presidents and geography? Are they important in themselves? Well, they form the coat hangers upon which you can hang the important stuff. It's like the recipient structure.
Yeah.
And the last fourth of these important structures these days would be the digital structures.
Yeah.
Kids these days, we can complain about kids these days. It's always a popular pastime with old people. But anyway, do you have a file structure in your computer? Do you know the difference between sending a message and sending an email? Like, I've received emails now from people, no headline, just nothing. And particularly also when using AI, how would you use it?
Yeah.
Do you set up like a project? Do you add documents to it? Do you start a new chat every time?
Yeah.
Do you all of those things?
Yeah.
Building the structures allows you to execute at a higher level.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to build.
Yeah.
You don't have to build the road as you're walking it.
Yeah.
The road is already there, so you can run faster.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like your point is great, because I assume that reducing the total cognitive stress, but also executive stress, will help you manage the challenging parts that you cannot avoid more easily if you have more resources to do it. I was only referring to, because I have ADHD, and this sort of resistance in threshold in doing things that I don't want to do. I feel like the strength to overcome that is very trainable, but only if I do it actively. So if I were to reduce everything too much so that this ability would deteriorate in something like a month, then whenever I would come across something that I would find very hard to do, that would be very difficult. And one great strategy is getting into the habit that whenever you don't feel like doing something, you have to do it literally every time. And it can be a bit disruptive to your life, but it works very well as a sort of training strategy.
That works, and I have personal experience of it, and one of those things that I learned of and has benefited greatly from is cold plunges.
Yeah.
Like you pour the bathtub with cold water, and
Yeah.
without thinking, just go and do it, and remain in there for some time. It's very powerful. But I think this works when the thing that you need to do is very, very clearly defined. You know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But not all obstacles, not all friction is of that kind.
Yeah.
Some friction is intellectual in the sense that, oh, I need to do some studying. Yeah, but what are you going to do? Oh, a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is like, it is not willpower that you're lacking. It is specificity.
Yeah.
It is something concrete and tangible, and then, reduce it so that it becomes clear, and now you see it. When it is something emotional, like it is a particular fear,
Yeah.
then I agree with you. But even then you can get some, like, ask a friend to come over and help you. And but I think you are absolutely right in that it can be strengthened, and it is very, very not useful, but let's say essential to strengthen it. It becomes like a super power. And one way is to, if you probably tried this, is like when you're going to do something, to not think about it.
Yeah. It's
too
a
much,
flow
to avoid
switch. Yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah. They teach that in military. It's a very, very powerful thing. Yes.
And go down into your body, and even, like I said, you can be in your chest, and this time not be in your chest, be in your spine. In my experience, like if I have to get out of bed, I go down, I try to feel as if I am my spinal cord, basically. And that brings me more into motion space, or if I'm out running, and it's heavy, from the head and into I'm in the lower spine, my hip, basically, legs, and that is where.
Yeah, I actually made a video regarding this a long time ago, and it's called "Your Hands Are Smarter Than You Are." It was in arm wrestling, of course, but then you sort of also turn off your brain and you're in your hands. And if you can do that, I find that to be, you're just completely circumventing the threshold of getting things done if you can manage to do it. And
and again, it works when the thing you need to do is very clearly defined. You need to make that phone call, for example, or you need to ask that person to marry you or whatever.
Yeah. I was wondering, this is probably, I would love to do a part 2 sometimes, but this is probably the last question for today. But in regards to negative thoughts or feelings, a great thing to learn is the habit of trying to make it positive. When it comes to getting things done, the habit of what we just talked about, now I have to do it, can be very helpful. I thought of more examples, but I think you get the point. What is a habit that someone that too often finds themselves in a sort of automatic state? I do believe, I'm not going to say it certainly, but it's known I think it's known as the default mode network. But basically, let's call it the AI Brainrot state. Yeah. What would be a tangible sort of habit? You talked about getting down into your body, but what would be something that would be maximally easy to connect to getting out of some sort of automatic non-executive control state?
Yes. There is a clear answer to this, and the way I would put it depends a little bit on who the audience is. Are you going to publish this like unfiltered, or will you reduce it to like 1 hour, or are you going to cut out only
I'm just going to cut out the where I dropped the phone, and if there's long pauses, you can pause as long as you want. I will just copy paste the question and yeah. But assume that the audience is highly intelligent.
The answer to the question is, ironically, because I said earlier that once you discover that you are the answer to the question is use language. That is, deliberately think using language. That is, ask questions deliberately.
Very interesting.
And for example, I say this. It's a bit ironic because earlier I said that you want to make things quiet in your brain, to stop the voices in your head, or the words in your mind, basically.
Yeah.
The words in your mind that we want to stop are the sort of default network ruminations, or words that just come. You don't have to listen to them. You can quiet that part, and you can replace it. Doesn't have to be constant, but now and then with ask questions. So I'm asking, where am I, for example?
Yeah.
Am I doing? I can, or as I said earlier, I can even call from within my subconscious for like, what is the name of that person?
Yeah.
And then hold.
Yeah.
There it came. And this is modern secular Western people have our understanding of what religion and religious psychology has eroded.
Yeah.
And this is particularly true of very intelligent people, because they are very susceptible to a view of religion and religious psychology that is more like a caricature.
Yeah.
The ancient peoples, it wasn't that they believed that the earth was flat or that the sun was a god or somehow. It was something else entirely.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you think of religion and spiritual practices as technology.
Yeah.
Think of it as technology for operating, or like for operating the full system, including the parts that are outside of your verbal domain and ego and so on.
Yeah.
It is less about answering the big questions about the universe.
Yeah.
It is more about relating to the fullness within. So,
What you're saying is super interesting. This is by far the most fascinating thing you said, because, well, everything has been it's been a very fascinating conversation, but this is basically this sort of stream of thoughts that may sort of be considered something very negative, a lack of focus. What you're basically saying is that activating metacognition, and what I found, it's a very fascinating idea to further specify exactly the thoughts. You mentioned like activating your thoughts to be like, where am I? What am I doing here? Or where is that person? But imagine that this is actually a gateway to your unconscious if you ask, what am I thinking? Why am I thinking this? And maybe that could be.
and the thing is, you don't need to make up an answer.
Yeah.
There are other cases when I talk about like memory and learning and studying. Then your mind, and the mind is the part of the brain that can think in words and so on. Then it makes sense to make up something, make up a connection between this thing and the course book and so on. But here, it is rather that you want to leave silence and see what comes.
Yeah.
And I was going to say that religion can be polarized in a negative and a positive way, so to speak, which should be no surprise to anyone, I guess. But in its more evolved,
in its more evolved manifestations,
it is an evolved manifestation where prayer being not so much superstition, but rather two parts of the same nerve system communicating with each other. So if you have the luxury of being able to sit down, and ask questions about your subconscious and why do I think that, and see what happens, that is fine. But what if you're out and about and you're walking down the street, or you're in class, or you're at work? Still ask these questions, but then not to bring you away from the moment and the work, but to bring you further into it, to be there fully. And so, and language, I mean, it is no coincidence that ancient peoples and shamanic peoples and religions all over the world, including, both lost religions and religions that are still around, had magic language. Forms, incantations. It has a power to transform states of mind. We don't need to go into anything supernatural, anything like that. It is the power of language and poetry and liturgy and music and to alter states of mind.
Yeah, and I feel like the repetition of liturgy is to keep the whatever underlying thing, and when you repeat it over and over, the words start to lose meaning, and that is when you enter into the magical parts of it. Because if you say a prayer literally 1,000 times, well, if you say apple 50 times, you're going to be like, the words start to just and I feel like
that's a whole very interesting topic in its own right, actually.
And I feel like that's the reason they do this sort of repetitive drumming as well, because while at first you may think of it as drumming, but the details, either of the instrument or the words, if you just repeat it over and over and over again, it starts to fade away.
I think there are both methods here. What you're describing is absolutely the case when you talk about words as mantras, as magic words, you know, like shaman or short prayers or mantras, or, you know, like the Hare Krishna, etc. Repeating it for the effect of it. But then you have other cases, like we talked about, you know, in Zen Buddhism, a koan is a riddle where you actually need to pay attention to what does this mean in order for it to start to work. And you could have, like I said, the question was, how do you get out of the slumber, you know, the default mode network where how do you sort of wake yourself up? And I said, I'm not saying this is the only way, but I think it is the way that is easiest to teach is ask questions. Students at lectures, for example, in universities, taking notes, try to come up with questions. Or journalists, or like the thing that you're doing right now, which is kind of a form of journalism, I guess. You invite people and you talk to them. You how do you manage to pay attention for hours? Well, you try to come up with questions. You try to find, okay. And having that task is like having something to hold on to, something to grasp. And that is how you keep your thread of focus and attention active.
Interaction, because one of the most common problems that ADD people have is with their spouse. Their spouse talks to them and they can't focus on the conversation, but that is because the spouse leaves no room for answers. Because I could talk to you for 10 hours and I would never lose focus, because, you know, you talk for maximally 3 or 4 minutes. If you were to go on for 20 minutes, eventually I would sort of fade out. And that is because I would not feel that I'm interacting with you. And I mean, this has been a super fascinating chat. And I have prepared, I think it's 18 questions. And we managed to make like 1.5 hours out of one of them. And
Really?
What is intelligence?
There.
Sorry?
You have 17 more questions there.
Yeah. And I think we're going to need a part 2 sometime.
Yeah, it's feel free to come back to me next year, or when you when you run out of other people to talk to. You always welcome. It's been fun.
And I'm going to make sure to let everyone know in the introduction about brain gain. And is there anything else that you're currently up to that, you know, what is your next 3 to 6 months like?
I do have a couple of projects that I'm working on. I don't want to, as you say, you don't want to jinx it by talking too much of it before it is. But I lecture and I write on how to improve learning in all sorts of contexts, professionally and academically, and also the whole idea of intelligence. Like, what is intelligence? And they say that you can't improve your IQ.
That is
however,
yes.
Is it possible to act as if you were more intelligent? And I don't mean to fake it. I mean to copy habits and patterns of intelligent people, so that you, regardless of your IQ, do more with the capacity that you have. And that is actually a super interesting field that I am exploring, how to teach and how to spread. to
I
other
mean,
people.
I could talk an hour on different chess analogies, but it is so obvious that there are just extreme levels of improvement that someone could make. Uh, maybe it is quite specific, but I imagine like if you're spending 2 hours every day doing memory exercises and stuff like that, certainly your brain can grow as much as muscles, or maybe even more, or become more complex.
They can. Only the problem with memory is that you become very, very good at memorizing that thing.
Mm.
And but there are some techniques that do work across the board when it comes to memory, and that do transfer between domains.
Yeah,
But
maybe
then there are other.
you can put anything in your memory castle. So if you get a great memory castle, then
And the thing with highly educated people is that even if they don't conceive of it as a memory castle as such, like one of my intellectual role models is an American professor, Tyler Cowen, who's an economist and a polymath and one of the most well-read and educated people probably on earth. And he reads books like other people read newspapers, and he travels extensively, and he has explained how by traveling to countries and cities and places, it sort of becomes almost like a memory palace, like art and architecture and history and science from those places. He can then associate it to those places by virtue of having been there and having vivid memories and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, we should probably not start with other questions, because then there will be another hour.
Just stick around for a little while after I end the recording so that it uploads. Goodbye, YouTube. Have a fantastic day.